Hello, everyone, and welcome to our BI Livecast series. My name is Carrie Keenan, and I'm one of the program directors here at Brand Innovators. I want to welcome everyone to the Women in Marketing Livecast, and today's going to be really, really special. I'm thrilled to kick us off. We've got a phenomenal agenda with an awesome line of marketers for you. Before we get started, though, I want to thank all the marketers, the sponsors, and you, the audience, for helping make today even possible. Throughout the event, you're going to see down at the bottom a Q&A widget and a chat widget. And we encourage you to use those to engage with our speakers and the other attendees with those widgets throughout the program. And now, without further ado, I want you to please join me in welcoming. We've got Brandy Blackwell, the Senior Director of Marketing for Another Broken Egg Cafe, and Ashley Dameyer, the Head of Strategy, Restaurant and Convenience at Bounteous. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, thanks, Carrie.
Nice to see you, Ashley. And Brandy, we'll see you hopefully in a second.
Hi, just give me 1 second.
All good. Technology is always fun on these.
Yes, and it's always fun to be the first panelist, right?
Exactly. You got to kick it off. Set the bar for the day. Nice and easy.
Yes.
And then Ashley, while we're waiting on Brandy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Take it from there.
Okay, great. Yes, excited to be here. I will be moderating the session with Brandy. My name is Ashley Dameyer, and I am the Head of Strategy for our restaurant and convenience vertical at Bounteous. Bounteous is a global digital agency, and we specialize in a number of verticals, but restaurants is kind of my world. So it's a perfect fit to be talking to Brandy today.
Perfect. And it was exactly the time we needed. So Brandy, Ashley, I'll let you two take it away. Brandy, you are still on mute though.
Absolutely.
All right.
I did know that. I couldn't start saying that I was on mute. I needed to make sure I added my background though. So I wanted to get that on first, unless you want to see my dogs. So
I always want to see the dogs.
Yeah.
I will step off and I'll let you two have a great chat.
Thanks, Carrie.
Awesome. So I'll just kind of kick us off. Today, we're talking about mentorship and career growth for women in marketing, but we're also talking about challenges and opportunities for restaurants as they look to expand with off-premise and focus on digital. So we're going to have a lot of great stuff to cover today. Please feel free to leave questions in the Q&A chat, and we will get to those at the end. Cool. So Brandy, do you want to take some time to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about your career?
Sure, I'd love to. So first off, thank you for having me. And Ashley, it's been a pleasure to get to know you as well. Excited to be here. I have had a very interesting career already in the past 15 years in the restaurant space. I started out in 2008 by joining a fast casual concept out of Orlando, Florida, Tijuana Flats, and worked my way up from marketing manager to director there, overseeing all of brand marketing, as well as field marketing, and lots of changes, lots of growth, but really had a lot of boots on the ground. And then at that point, I spent about 8.5 years there and decided to take a leap of faith. And I moved from the Orlando area up to Atlanta. And I took a role in 2017 as the director of off-premises for McAllister's Deli as part of Focus Brands. And the interesting thing with that was it was the first off-premises role in the building, with 7 brands at the time. So really a new space, and this whole off-premises, word just started buzzing, and, third-party delivery started growing, and it just became a huge focus. And I thought, our leader at the time had a very exciting vision for building this out and recognizing the need for this role. And so from there, spent a couple of years in that role, growing the space, and then moved to Boston and helped to really propel their off-premises business in the digital department. And so I was able to work with third-party delivery, launch it, scale it from white space across all the major aggregators and players across the nation, and for all the US domestic business. and build out a catering program that went into, pilot while we were there. And then from there, moved over to Jimmy John's close to 2.5 years later, moved over to Jimmy John's to lead their digital e-commerce business. So app and web optimization, online digital ordering, and really kind of got more into the user experience and just overall, digital ordering space than third-party space. So that was kind of cool to see that all come together. And then most recently, I joined Another Broken Egg back at the end of May. So only a few months in here as a senior director of marketing, where obviously we've got 82 units in 15 states and able to really dive back into a really, really healthy growing brand, but a smaller brand that, able to kind of have my hands in everything. So that's really exciting where I am now.
That's awesome. I think it's pretty impressive that your career is timed with you being on the cusp of bringing off-premise and digital channels to life. So you've really kind of been there since the start of this industry and the way it exists today, where many brands had to pivot quickly with the pandemic and, really didn't have an understanding of how to have that strategy implemented when the world shut down. So we're going to kind of circle back to that topic in a little bit, but I wanted to start with more about just your experience and your career growth. And, what do you kind of attribute to the success that you've been able to have in your career over the last 15 years?
Well, that's assuming that I think it's successful and you think it's successful, but thank you. Thank you so much. I can just tell you that I have taken chances. I have taken leaps of faith when I was nervous or afraid to, and really said, what would be the alternative? It would be regret, right? So moving to Boston I actually said no to the recruiter initially. And, I always take conversations because I think it's healthy. But I, said, what do I have to lose going up there and working for this amazing company that I believed in, from childhood? I thought, the alternative was regretting not going and trying to take a role, because I didn't know anybody in Boston. I didn't, I was far away. I might not like it there. And certainly, always being able to take risk, not say no. I don't really turn down much in the way of opportunities to not only connect with industry peers, but other marketers outside of the industry and learn from them. But overall, anything that I've been afraid of, challenged, scared, nervous speaking, I have decided that was going to be the best opportunity to move me forward in my career.
That's great. Do you feel like you've faced any challenges specifically because you're a female in the space?
Absolutely. Now, I have always felt that, if you, prove yourself, it doesn't really matter if you're male or female. Now, I certainly know that's not always the case. And perhaps I've been even, naive to some things in the past because I show up and think I can play with the men and the boys. But I will tell you that, in the restaurant space specifically, there, of course, you see a lot in the past, you've seen a lot of leadership that's been male. So, that's starting to really change, which I think is great. And I think, embracing that change and riding that train it's just the beginning. So the opportunities and the pay are starting to definitely be, skew more equal from male, female. And I think the other thing is, just specifically in restaurants, we have, the operations teams tend to be male in many cases. Again, that's changing. So I don't want to make blanket statements here, but, and then you have a lot of the marketing teams have been female historically. And often, you get not only a little bit of perhaps maybe the feeling of the male to female, challenges there, but overall, the idea of just operations in general as a challenge, believing in what marketing is doing and marketing understanding the challenges that ops faces on a day-to-day basis also tends to be something that I've really embraced, and it does help overcome that feeling of, your ideas, you're a woman, you're not delivering your idea, or it's not being accepted.
Yes, that's very true. We have to start speaking the same language to get on the same page, I think. Is there anything that you've sought out for support, whether that's networks that you've joined or meeting different mentors who've helped you along the way with your career that have really helped you be more confident and go after these positions, with confidence?
Well, sure. I mean, our CEO at Another Broken Egg was my direct boss at McAllister. So, he's a huge mentor to me, and I have stayed in contact with him as he's moved around to different leadership roles. And, the idea of just being able to say, hey, there's an open role, and have that trust to at least bring me in for the conversation, to have that interview with the other team members, is all stemmed from our rapport, back in 2017 that we built. Additionally, so some of my past coworkers or bosses have become mentors and are friends, and I say, I don't say friends lightly. Even people who work directly for me teach me so much, and I learned so much from my team members. But that's having that close relationship with them. I think from an industry standpoint, going out and accepting speaking engagements, panels, going to these conferences, having like-minded individuals who you're not afraid to ask those questions. I've got a great network on a board that I sit on, in a little plug here, the Marketing Execs Group for restaurants, part of the National Restaurant Association. It's a group of amazing people, and we have this wonderful friendship. But on top of that, we can email, who are you using for this vendor? And nobody's embarrassed to ask or say they don't know or don't have it all figured out, because none of us really do. So, I have used, professional networking, brand innovators, and connecting outside of my industry to really understand what some great practices are for digital or for other types of marketing, because really, there's other industries that are very far ahead in this space. And so kind of getting out of your restaurant bubble is critical. And I think additionally, just relying on, it's amazing how much your internal cross-functional team is critical to your support day in and day out. You spend so much time with your team members. So to build that rapport and to really dive into the culture, but believe in, and just to, I've sat there with an operations team member and said, I really would love for you to walk me through a P&L, and to really understand what an operator challenges face, where my marketing numbers hit on your line. But I had that relationship to be able to ask him without feeling, like I should already know this at this point.
Yeah, that's great. And then with your team and your direct reports, how are you supporting them and their career growth? Whether they're women or not, how are you building them up to be leaders as well?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I like some of the sink or swim approach sometimes, and I joke with my team members. In hindsight, they have thanked me for that, because it's one of the ways I learn, jumping in and diving in head first and saying, okay, I'm not going to necessarily hold your hand through this. You come with the ideas, or, hey, I'm not going to make this meeting. Can you present for me? Right? Let me know if you have any questions. I do that a good bit, because I think it encourages that, again, overcoming that fear and realizing, wow, that wasn't, I can do this, and giving that person that limelight to succeed too. So I'm big on it's we, not I. I want at any time a strong team member to be able to jump in and take my place. I tell them that I want them to take my role. And I also, I want to pick the best person that's going to work with me, that's going to make all of us as a department look better. Yes. And I want to know that I joke, but I say, if I ever got, hit by a bus, I want you to know what I do, and I want you to be able to do it, pretty easily. And so I operate as more of a we than a a leader or somebody who's telling somebody what to do. And I believe that it empowering anybody, women, but anyone, team member, male or female, under you to make decisions and to know that there's a career path is really critical, especially nowadays.
That's great. You mentioned the restaurant space is kind of unique and in some aspects a little bit behind other industries when it comes to things like digital transformation and marketing strategies. I'm curious what's keeping you in the restaurant industry as you've made different job moves over the past 15 years.
Oh, I say I drank the Kool-Aid. I really did. And thinking back to when I came out of school and going into an ad agency and, that really not lighting my candle or, really, really driving me because that was, advertising major, that's what you do. Then I got into the restaurant space and it was just so fast paced. It's so different every day. There's so much changing. And, even with COVID and how horrible that was for the industry, so many things did come out of it that were positive to move us forward in the digital space, to move us forward in so many different ways, like how we look at labor, how we look at our team members, how they want to work, what incentivizes them to be a part of a company. So down to like the culture and the building of, camaraderie. I think that we learned so much from COVID. And to me, like the passion of the restaurant individuals is so intense. It's just my friends in the industry. We get together and all we do is, talk about work and we really do, with a little bit of like, how's, your partner doing or what have you. I mean, it really is very much such a close-knit industry, such a group of friends, of caring individuals, but just fast-paced and able to, I actually tell people when I hire them, sometimes, and I hire outside of the industry too, it brings a lot of, different skill sets and talent, and experience, but I tell them, this is, you're not, we try to have work-life balance, but this is very much a fast-paced industry and a fast-paced role that there will be fires and we're going to have to, shift gears. And if that's not something that you enjoy, now's a good time for us to interview each other and decide if it's the right, situation for you.
Yeah. You have to be the type that thrives in that environment and doesn't get burnt out. Yeah. Well, that's great. I know that during the pandemic, it opened a lot of doors for your current job at Another Broken Egg Cafe, and that you guys are just exploding in growth and doing a lot of really great new and exciting things. So let's dive into that a little bit. What are some of the big initiatives and what do you think is leading to the growth that you guys have seen over the last couple of years?
Well, I can tell you all the initiatives that have come into play, which I'll get to in a minute, which I can't take credit for either. But I can also tell you that people are they're dying to get out with and be together again. And brunch lends itself to that. And the brunch category is growing and people are drinking a lot more than ever, just candidly. And we have such an amazing culinary program. We say indulgence, but we've got such an amazing chef, amazing menu. And people come together over food and want to not only be together, but they want to celebrate indulgence, what we say. And part of that is also with a spirited connection. So alcohol, there's the play on those words, and having a really diverse beverage program, a diverse menu, gluten-free options or gluten-friendly options, shall I say, and the option for somebody to come in and have the ambiance, the food, the beverage, the space, in a setting that that makes them thrive, I think is where we've really been successful. And then sure, you then bring in the past 2 years, we've essentially launched online ordering. We did in 30 days before I got there. We launched a new catering program. We got on 5 different third-party delivery services, launched on third-party catering aggregator sites. built an entire, first party and third party strategy. So all of those, I say, third party delivery, we actually enabled that, through an integration to filter through our channels too. So we can, if you come to anotherbrokenegg.com, you can get your food delivered. You can place a catering order online. None of that existed before. So that alone, and a new POS system that's cloud-based that also could, really has the ability to improve operational excellence and put all these integrations together. It comes with challenges, I will tell you that, but nonetheless, the idea of just let's get it done, and everybody rallied to get it done instead of kind of having pushback or saying it's going to be too hard. We can't handle it. Everybody said, let's go, and made it happen, which is super cool to learn about as I talk to some of our franchisees and our team members.
That's great. And you just rattled off some significant initiatives that probably would have taken a lot more than, 30 days or whatever they took during the pandemic. You guys were able to escalate them, get them done, pivot, and the business has benefited from that, which is just amazing. How has the team responded? You kind of mentioned that they were along for the ride, but their whole job is probably changing, right? If you're in marketing, you're talking about marketing for delivery now, or changing the experience when you come back into the dining room. How is the team feeling about all of that?
Well, as I always say, sales cures all. So certainly having the incremental revenue from these channels, and tying everything together with integration and technology that talks to each other has really been a game changer. Not remiss to say that it's not hard on our team members in the restaurants too, and our operators who are facilitating and learning all of this new technology. But I think one thing that we are really excited about is our new CRM platform. That as you talk about kind of tying this all together, we can, it's one thing to have all these new features and new accessibility channels and digital channels to grow sales, but understanding who that guest is or customer coming in and how they are consuming us and what they are consuming and when and how frequent, and learning more about them and being able to talk to them in a way that is personalized and speaks to their interest is really the next phase of where, we are striving to go to, towards. So the CRM program also has automation capabilities, SMS and email capabilities. So it becomes turnkey for segmentation and the ability to actually say, okay, so I know Ashley as our customer comes to us twice a month and she has a family, she has 2 kids, she likes to drink, one of our mimosas, and she, generally orders on these waffles. And then, she also now orders on a third-party delivery channel once a month, and caters from us once a quarter, right? And that's where we're trying to get to. So we know exactly how you're consuming another broken egg, even if it's not in the 4 walls of our restaurant.
That's so powerful to have that kind of information about your customers. And I'm sure you guys are excited to act on that. Are you looking to bring that experience now that it includes so many digital touch points where before it was just within your 4 walls? How are you looking at extending the brand and keeping that experience consistent and great for your customers when they're enjoying your mimosas at home versus at the restaurant? What are some of the things you guys are doing to make that great?
Well, one of the things we also did was launch our, alcohol to go kits, which resemble like a Capri Sun pack. They're actually really cool. And, so you can have your mimosa or your, Tito's and watermelon Red Bull at home, or in a setting. So, starting to look at like how we are, if we know how you are ordering, say, delivery, right? Are we looking at, let's see if Ashley knows that we also, can send her mimosa home with her with our special, flavor that she can't get at home. Or are we, looking at how we can appeal to group settings at home or in the workplace with, some of our tailored offerings. So I think the beverage program, having options to take that with you not only drives, it's accessibility, but it drives check, and, drives the inexperience that, and alcohol might be one of those differentiators, right? That you don't, normally you might come and get it there in one of our cafes, but you don't necessarily know that you can take that home with you and replicate one of our, spiked cold brews or something that's really unique to us that, it'd be hard to replicate at your own, home.
That's great. I can only imagine those spiked cold brews have kind of helped spur some user-generated content on social media and maybe some even additional platforms that you guys weren't as focused on before. I'm curious, have you guys expanded marketing programs with this kind of reinvention of some of these great things off premise?
Our off-premise business has just skyrocketed, and I think it's still a big opportunity to optimize our, I always look at off-premise as a couple phases. Like let's get on these platforms, let's get the integrations right. Let's make sure our guest-facing presence and menu is clean and accurate, right? Because we're playing on we're playing on a third party's site, and there's a lot of work that goes into that maintenance and management of a menu on a third party site that's not always turnkey down to hours and descriptions, and then you get that order might come back into the kitchen display unit and be completely read differently based on how the third party has it set up. So there's challenges just from a functional standpoint. So I think it's crawl before you walk and run. And so you've got to get things functional and working. And I'm big into leaning into that operational side to try to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward and things are working correctly. Mm-hmm. And then moving into the optimization phase of, are we taking advantage of what all of the third party sites have to offer? They're launching new technologies too, catering on their platform, group ordering. Are we taking advantage of that and opting into some of those things, which in itself markets itself because of your visibility in those channels and people viewing, your menu, and then highlighting promotions that might occur outside of the direct or the third party channel. So we are definitely looking at what those next steps are and how we bring attention to some of the new offerings, our seasonal menu items, and we lift those out and explore new channels.
That's great. With so much changing, operationally, you guys are talking about new packaging that you've implemented. You're talking about new technology that you've adopted, new strategies for marketing. How have you brought the franchisees along on this ride? And how has the marketing team gotten them excited about all of the new, changes?
I am a big believer in business cases. I think, we're not ever the first to do it. Hopefully we're not the last. So I talk to a franchisee in the way, I could talk about some of past experience and I'll talk a little bit about another broken egg. I talk to franchisees in a way that resonates with them. And that is like spend versus return.
Yes.
What can this do for my bottom line? And so candidly, again, we are in the business to make money. We're making people happy, but we are in the business to make money too. And so making money makes everybody happy. And so I don't stray away or shy away from that conversation because that is how this is for franchisees' livelihood. I mean, might be their entire bank, is life savings into this brand. And if they're going to entrust in the brand and us as a support role, we need to deliver, results to them. And so I'm also very candid in those conversations of, we just have to do this because technically we are that far behind and we have to make this upgrade in order to make sure everything talks to each other. Packaging is a tough one. Packaging is one of those that it needs to represent the brand and needs to be functional even more so than ever because things are, items are leaving the building and food integrity is critical, but it needs to be cost efficient and make sense as well. So it's finding that right balance. So whenever we launch new technology or get buy-in, we tend to test, we tend to show business cases from other brands or test internally and show the business case first at maybe a company location. We prove out the concept, you know, hopefully show a lift in sales if that's applicable. And then, you know, and then we give a period of time also for adoption. We don't say it's, oh, you're launching tomorrow and it's going to cost you, because a lot of this technology does cost money, especially on the front side. So we get that business case, we sell in, and then we hopefully give a reasonable amount of time for a franchisee to adopt and to ask us questions or to, you know, put it into one of their locations and really flush it out. So we work with them to make sure that everybody feels like they have a say and are part of the decision making throughout the entire process from concepting to launching.
I love how you put it, you know, others are probably already doing this and hopefully we're not the last to do it. You know,
I don't like to be the first. I don't like to be the first or the last. You know, we ride somewhere in the upper middle.
The upper middle is perfect. You can see that it's working and you can be a little bit more confident in the decision to pursue. I do want to talk about the competition, especially in the brunch space, but, you know, in restaurants as a whole, it does seem like we're all just hustling to get this digital first experience out there, to do this digital transformation. How are you guys feeling like you're continuing to win in such a competitive space, especially brunch category?
I think we just have such unique offerings. And I think, you know, we see that people come to us for, there's items we put on the menu that are incredibly, you know, or have that healthy halo. And a lot of them are beautiful. They taste great. They don't always sell, right? So it's really understanding what your guest wants, what they actually are buying versus what the industry is telling you is the latest, like, you know, food trend. And I think that's hard because I could put in every technology that every person called me about, but we have to kind of think about impact to team members. And when we look at like competition, there's a lot of I call them shiny objects, right? But the pennies are sometimes the ones that really drive the business. And at the end of the day, are we creating a great experience in the four walls of the restaurant? And are we able to fulfill the expectations and meet the expectations or exceed them of our true, like, you know, loyal customers? I think you have to start there because everything else is going to be a distraction otherwise. And if you don't have enough people to show up in the restaurant because or the culture is not strong, you're going to have turnover and the experience is going to show negatively to those customers. Now, to take that a step further, I think really looking at your tech stack and not trying to chase what everyone else is chasing. So I'll give you a good example. You know, we don't have a full to bright like points loyalty program. I mean, we have an email club that you join. We now are working in our CRM program very closely to really understand who each guest is, which allows us to put out targeted, personalized one-to-one messaging and to automate and to kind of group people into similar categories. But a loyalty, everybody started chasing the loyalty, you know, craze. And really, and that's just an observation I had is like, who are you using for loyalty is like a constant, you know, what are you doing for your loyalty program? You know, what does this person have over this vendor? And I think really stepping back and saying like, our loyal guests come to us, you know, X number of times, and certainly, and they don't come to us for a discount either. That's so, you know, that is where a lot of people have like rushed to this discounting space. Just back, I have visions of 2009, you know, in the BOGO land, and it was very hard to get out of in that spiral. And so for us, we're not a discounting brand. So how do we show you loyalty and reward you in a way that is not discount based, but makes you, Ashley, our guests, feel good? Is it here? We're going to let you, you know, we know that you come 4 times a month, but you know, you're one of our top. Yeah. So we're going to make sure you get to skip the line, you know, or we know you, and we come to the table and we bring you a free mimosa, right? It starts to be less about like, are you coming to us for a deal? Or are you coming to us and then we're surprising and delighting you, that feels personal, and we're talking to you that way. So I think it's just really understanding what it is that your brand needs, where the gaps are, but also like it doesn't have to be a one size fits all approach across every brand and the industry.
That data that you're going to have on the customer is so powerful. It almost unlocks the marketing 2.0 that you guys are going to be able to do in the coming year, and just really making that in-restaurant experience personalized and special. What other trends or predictions do you have for how that experience is going to change over the next few years?
Yeah, I think so. To your point about data, I think it's a really interesting one, because we all talk data, and like that word's almost like used as much as integration is,
and loyalty
and digital innovation. So those are the best words, right? And loyalty. Personalization is another. But I think that the data piece is interesting, because I find that is one of the most critical pieces of businesses to focus on. And it's not as, I love data because I'm kind of nerdy like that, but it's not a sexy thing to focus on. But we are getting data now in cohorts, and I say we as an industry, and as marketers. And do we really use that, mine that data, or do we understand it? Do we have the resources internally or externally to do something with that data, or to help us understand what to do with it? Because otherwise it's just a stockpile of data. That's exactly what it is. And usually in a ton of different warehouses that don't talk to each other. And, so the first thing I recommend in conjunction with trying to do, talk to your customers in a personalized way, is actually understanding data, but being able to centralize it and make assumptions out of it. Because again, it can be centralized, but if you don't have a way to mine it or to use it, it's going to be virtually just daunting. So one of the things that we worked on is trying to pull in 4 or 5 different data warehouses and have them aggregated into, a tool like a BI tool or something that's able to then work with somebody who's going to help set those queries up and make it so that it's fills ops needs, marketing needs, supply chain. And then do we have a way to disperse it in an automated way is always a question as well. So I think that's one piece about the data. I think coming down the pipeline, gosh, that's a hard question, because like, if you ask me, it's like a blur from 2019 to now. I couldn't have crystal balled anything at this point, and I try not to totally put projections out there because they're going to be wrong. I think we will continue to see commodity shortages or price increases on menus, which will at some point become a elasticity, or sensitivity. Are we going to have, and we as an industry have to be cautious about pricing yourself out, because price is always an easy, shot in the arm. But there does come a point where, with inflation, and just the value has to be there. So what that value is does sometimes boil down to, are you getting for what you pay for? Are you happy with what you're getting? And are you fulfilled? So I think that's not going away anytime soon. And to be mindful of, packaging is another one. Plastic sometimes is cheaper, then it's paper, then, this month it's this, or they run out of glue to shut the bags. We've dealt with all of it. And I think, understanding, really truly understanding the sustainability push, is that, truly here to stay for every piece of our packaging? Or do we, right now, do we have some levers we can pull that might, later we want to move away from plastic altogether, but maybe right now is not the time. So just being strategic about supplies. Labor is the biggest, hands down, the biggest challenge for so many industries and trades. Restaurants are just one of them. But finding ways to really incentivize your teams without just being paid, just pay as the only incentive to what, do we support you in your education if you stay a certain amount of time? What makes you want to work for us, that makes you really drawn to the culture, and believe in a brand. That's going to be critical, and that's for upper level too. It's not, that's 16-year-olds. That's full-time team members. I mean,
Right.
and jumping and the ability to work from home. Like, what are we doing as a strategy as a whole to retain, our talent? I think robotics is still going to continue. We've definitely got the robotics piece, as labor continues to be a challenge. That's going to expedite, I think, the kiosk, cashless restaurants, and the need for less human hands in the equation. So those are the next 6 to 12 months in my mind. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Brandy, for all of that insight and wealth of knowledge you shared with us today. I know Carrie's jumping back on because we've got a packed lineup of other speakers coming up right behind
Playing
us.
the Jennifer Coolidge dance-off music for you.
Yeah,
I just want to thank you both so much for today. Brandy, my home brewed coffee this morning is really disappointing to me now that I heard about your spiked cold brews.
Yeah,
But I won't hold that against you. Just my own coffee. I just thanks so much for both joining us today.
We're due for brunch when you come in town.
It's a date.
Thanks so much.
thank you.
All right, have a great day.
Bye.
And then if you want to join me bringing up our next speakers, we have Basak, for the VP of Marketing from Mind, and Rachel Ian McGovern, the VP of Sales at Digital Remedy.
Hey,
Welcome,
Kara.
Ellie. How did I do with the last name?
It's Basak, but don't worry about it.
Oh, so close. Okay. I usually blame the Wisconsin accent for anything I mispronounce, so it's usually a good cover, but I always like to check.
Yep. Actually, I'm from Chicago, so I like to say my A's
Lovely.
similarly.
Perfect.
Hey, Rachel.
Well, welcome. Hi, Rachel. I will hop off and let you two have a great chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm trying to change my background at the same time and it's not letting me. So I'm just going to roll with it as we go. Also from the Midwest. I love a strong, thick Midwestern accent, as you will hear as I'm presenting. I am here to work with Allie and talk to you about diamonds in the rough and how to recruit A+ marketers from other industries and disciplines. Quick introduction of me, and then I'll let Allie introduce herself. I am Rachel Mcgovern, VP of Sales at Digital Remedy. We are a digital media execution company helping brands and agencies create efficiencies when it comes to costs, resources, and time. Over the last few years, our focus has been in the performance OTT media space and a product specifically called Flip. It allows us to report and optimize path to conversion from CTV impressions. So little shameless plug there going on. I've had the chance to meet with Allie a couple of times, and I'm very excited for you guys to hear from her as well on how she's created many marketing dream teams over her career. So Allie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, as Rachel said, I'm the VP of Marketing at Mind. And Mind is a consumer real estate startup who helps people invest in single-family rental properties. So mine started out in 2016 in the property management space, and now we've evolved in the past few years into expanding into buying homes, selling rental homes, mortgages, insurance. So now we're a one-stop shop for single-family rental home investing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I already told you before our first meeting that I stalked you a little bit on LinkedIn. I'm very impressed with your background and kind of your journey into marketing. So I'm going to let you kind of explain to the group on, how you got to the role you are today.
Yeah, so I came up with the topic of diamonds in the rough because I would like to think that I'm one of them. I have a very non-traditional background, as you mentioned, and so I love to talk about finding marketers from other disciplines because that's what happened with me. Someone took a chance on me. I started off right out of college. I did a program called Teach for America in Miami, and I taught English in Ecuador. So my first career was as a teacher. And then I went on to law school and I practiced for a few years in human rights and refugee law. And So actually, the way that I got into marketing, truth be told, is that I was a struggling nonprofit attorney. And I decided to moonlight doing some legal research and writing white papers for my friend's startup because I needed some extra cash living in the Bay Area. And I just loved the pace and the creative problem solving that I was seeing in startups. So I was lucky enough that someone took a chance and gave me a full-time offer and encouraged me to jump from law to marketing because I was just much better at it naturally. So then I went on to lead marketing teams at a host of different industries, different makeups, direct to consumer, consumer packaged goods. So I helped found a clean beauty makeup company. So it's an e-commerce company where you can order beauty products that are all clean online. And the Flex company, which is a periods product company that is really cool. And they're sold at Walgreens and Target and direct to consumer. And then I also led marketing teams at marketplace services companies like Upwork and Brightwheel. And then I ran the North American team at WeWork. And yes, the Apple TV show is extremely accurate. I highly recommend it as a good watch, a good binge. And now mine.
Love We Crashed on Apple TV, especially as a work user for many times over my career. So it's definitely worth the watch.
Nice. I agree.
So after even talking on our first meeting, I mentioned it's interesting that you have a law degree. How do you feel that's kind of helped you in your current role as VP of Marketing?
Yeah. So for a long time, I think that my legal background was kind of like something I wanted to leave off my resume because I was kind of like, oh, it looks like I've been so scattered when this is my third career. But over the years, I realized that I think every role is just a compilation of hard and soft skills. And we hear that a lot, but just to give you an example, many of the hard skills that you learn in law school transfer over quite well to marketing, even though you wouldn't think so at first blush. So for example, storytelling, obviously brand marketers especially need to be great at storytelling. And you take a lot of trial advocacy and courses in law school, and crafting that story in a way that would be compelling to a jury is also compelling to your audience when you're a marketer. So that helps a lot with brand marketing and PR. And then another skill that you have to learn in law school is making really crisp arguments and then backing them up with facts to support your arguments, right? And so that translates really well to product marketing, where you're making a point and then showing features, benefits, and proof points that back up your point. And then my mentor taught me this, but being a strong writer, I think, is the number one skill that every marketer needs to have, both to communicate internally and get your executive team on board with your ideas, and then also writing for your external audiences. So that's a skill that I look for in all the applicants to my team. And then, so those are the hard skills that I always look for and the ones that translate from law. And then, I think you can learn soft skills from most disciplines. And a lot of times it's just your life experiences where you develop those soft skills.
Very, very true. So we've talked a lot about you, and I know that's not your favorite topic. Let's move over. Let's move over and discuss, how you've built out these teams of marketing rock stars. Give me some good examples of great hires that you've had, what you found insightful about them, and how they pretty much delivered to your expectations.
Yeah. So the reason I came up with this topic is because I've had a lot of people that weren't on paper, they weren't necessarily qualified, or their resume didn't directly map to the role I was recruiting for. Especially for junior level roles and mid-level roles, I don't confine my search to people who are in the same industry as the company that I'm recruiting for. So I will say the one caveat to that is if I'm new to the industry, for example, when I first started in real estate investing, you have to have a few senior people on your team who can actually help you get up to speed on the subject matter so that I can become a subject matter expert. But I'll share a few examples of people who I've hired over the years who didn't on paper look like they mapped to the role. So first, for product marketing, I like to find people with consulting backgrounds. A lot of time there's consultants who are really brilliant and have all of the hard skills that you need to be a great product marketer. And there's a lot of people in consulting who feel like they're ready to actually stay at one company and see the impact of their work come to fruition. And so they're kind of frustrated being in consulting and moving around. I love to poach those people and turn them into awesome product marketers. There's one woman in particular that I'm thinking of from my Upwork days. She was a data analyst for a specific vertical or category. And she ended up switching over to my team and moving up through the ranks. And now she leads marketing teams for startups as well. She is amazing. Another one I can think of, a great example, was a woman who at one point at Upwork, I was actually running the inside sales team. Never again, Rachel. I don't know how you do it, but for temporarily, I was running and building out the inside sales team. And I had this one rep who was pretty right out of college, an SDR. And I just noticed she was just so strategic, so smart, really insightful. And over time, as I gained her trust, she was just honest with me that she just didn't want to do sales. In fact, she hated it. But she knew our product and services so well that I decided to take a chance on her after I saw that she was a really strong writer, and I moved her over into a junior product marketing role. And now she's killing it as a product marketer, moving up the ranks. She works at Zendesk. So those are a couple examples for product marketing. And I have more. For my brand team currently, I have 2 women leading our brand team who previously worked in other industries outside of real estate. So my director of brand worked in entertainment before in Hollywood, and she was worked in script writing and comedy show concepting at Warner and TBS, or Comedy Central, I think it was. And then the other one was a fashion major in New York, and she worked for Net-a-Porter right out of college, and then for Compass doing real estate, luxury real estate, social media. And I pulled her over to Mind, and they both have this level of humanity and humor and polish and poshness they add to our brand that I couldn't have found if I was just looking for people who had property management experience, for example. And then I found most of my creative team at Urban Outfitters and Anthropologie. So
interesting.
Yeah, we now have totally different from real estate, but I found one art director there and convinced her to come on board. And now we have 4 based in Philly who all worked for that company. So they need to be able to know their role and be able to hit the ground running on day one if they're more senior folks, but especially for mid-level and junior folks, I think that smart people can learn the industry. It's more those hard and soft skills that they need to have coming in.
Yep, agreed. And also agree, sales isn't for everyone. It's a fun sport for sure. I would say that listening to that and the backgrounds, I find it very interesting to hear you talk about hiring from outside of the industry, only because in the many years that I've been hiring and managing teams, I always look within the industry for who I want to hire, who have an understanding of what we do and how to do it quickly. What skills, when you're talking to candidates, are you looking for?
Yeah, again, it's just a combo of hard and soft skills. So for marketers across the board, the hard skills you need to have, I mentioned writing, being able to lay out information in a hierarchy that makes sense and is easily digestible is really important for marketers. And then the other one that's a little bit harder sometimes to find is data analysis skills. So I don't need people who have, computer science or data engineering backgrounds. I don't need you to pull the data. I don't need you to know SQL, but you can't be intimidated by data as a marketer, and probably similar to sales, right? And even the creatives, I really want them to be able to use numbers to tell a story and to show business impact so that we can get more budget and do more exciting things. So I think oftentimes, especially people who don't have quant backgrounds, confuse having quantitative skills with analytical skills, and they're not necessarily the same. You can have almost no quant skills. You can be unable to build out formulas in Excel and still have analytical skills, right? So I think that just making sure we don't conflate the two is really important. So yeah, writing and data analysis. And then as far as, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, that was the hard skills that you were looking for in candidates?
Those are hard skills for marketing. And then for soft skills, I just look for people who are creative, who are brave enough to speak up and identify problems right when they see them. I think like with startups especially, we move at such a fast pace that you have to be able to just raise your hand and say, hey, I think this could be done better. And the best people are the ones who can also say, and here's my idea for how to make this better. So suggesting a solution in addition to being able to flag problems. And then another big one, we do what's called a conscious leadership framework here at Mind. So another one that we learned through that framework of developing leadership skills is being able to initiate constructive conflict, and then going on to have a really important, you have at it and you stay above the line is what we call it. So everyone feels safe and calm and there's trust built. And so you guys can debate, but then at the end of it, the people, whoever's argument did not win out can still disagree, but they commit. So the whole group together can move forward and be aligned. I think that's another thing, is just being able to initiate constructive conflict is another soft skill. And then another one that's really important, especially as you move up the ranks, is cross-functional leadership. So being able to use your influence to work not just within marketing, but partner with other teams like sales or product or operations to be able to do joint efforts between marketing and those other teams. And so I look for people who have practiced with that, not being able to build so that you don't have too many silos within the organization. So marketing isn't siloed off. So those are some of the soft skills that I look for.
That's great. I love the constructive conflict, disagree, but commit. I think that's just a fabulous way to end a meeting. You don't want a team of all yes people. You want there to be collaboration too at the end of the day too. Yeah. So your hiring process has to be interesting as well. Yeah. What are the expectations that you have when you're interviewing people?
Yeah, so I have built out a pretty, I think it's pretty non-traditional hiring process over the years. So what I do is I partner with the recruiting team and I make sure that the recruiter on any given open rec that I have understands exactly what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for. And after that initial screen, I immediately ask for work samples from candidates. So for marketing, I usually for most marketing roles, I usually ask for a writing sample. So that can be, ideally it's work related, but if they don't have that for whatever reason, it can be even a Yelp review that you listed out or a personal blog entry that you've created. And I think you'd be surprised what people submit. It tells a lot about your just like command of the English language, your command of grammar, but then also just people send sometimes extremely inappropriate things. And I'm quite liberal on what I would consider appropriate at work. So I think that a lot of judgment is shown by what people submit as their work samples as well. And then I ask for one report or presentation that they've done in the past. And so here I'm looking again for those analytical skills and ability to present information in a concise way. And then one process document or flow chart so that I can see if you're able to do project management or kind of organize things operationally. And then it's different for creatives. For creatives, I mostly go off their portfolios because I think that your past work is very telling about your future work. So, and then I don't know about you, Rachel. I think one thing I still do that I think is a little bit controversial is that I still do assign a case study or project, and then have for director level and above roles, I have the candidate present that to a panel of people. And especially lately with the hire market being so hot, I've had a couple people drop out of the interview process because they didn't want to do that case study or project, because they were just like, no, I have so many offers. I don't want to do extra work. And so, that's made me a little bit nervous the past couple months, but ultimately my best hires are always happy to do it, as long as, of course, I don't expect free consulting work. I try to confine the project to 2 to 3 hours max total, all in, including prepping for the interview. So it's just like a small thing, but yeah, I don't do you do case studies when you're hiring?
So, not case studies, but it's interesting when you talked about presentations. We do, because I'm hiring for sales roles, we'll look at them to present a product to us, not necessarily hear about what they're selling now. They can choose what it is. I'm not going to ask them to sell me a pen. I just want to see how they present and what their skills are, and personality. Does that come out when they're presenting as well? So we've done that.
Have you ever had somebody decline because they didn't want to do that part of it? I mean, for sales.
No, I have not had anyone decline. That's why I kind of, when you said that, I was caught off guard, because it really is just surprising that someone who would go that far in the interview process and then be tap, I'm out.
Yeah, I think, salespeople are very outgoing, and marketers sometimes can be more introverted. You get a mix. So
just a little bit outgoing and introverted. For sure. References. Do you get references as well?
I do. I actually think references are really important, but I do it a little different spin on it than most people. So obviously people are going to line up references who are going to, give them glowing reviews of past performance and say, oh yes, this person's great. And most people use it as kind of the last step to make sure this person isn't a serial killer or something, right? Like not, like that they're not crazy. But I actually use it to say, hey, I'm planning on hiring this person. And so what were a few things that you were coaching them on that will help me be a better manager to them and help me set them on a growth trajectory, right? In a successful path right from the start, right out of the gate. And then people tend to be a little bit more forthcoming, because everyone has things that they have to work on. And if the reference is just kind of like dodging the question, sometimes I'll even give them multiple choice questions, like, of these 3 things, which one are they the strongest on? Or of these 3 things, where are they the weakest? And it just kind of forces people to
conversation.
Yeah, it forces the conversation to open up more. Exactly.
Yeah, same here. I like to look at LinkedIn references again, but those are very similar to a reference that somebody gives you. They're always going to give you the best reference, but I also even ask for a customer reference, because I want to hear from a client.
That's really smart.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about hiring and references and assignments and all of that. You're looking to onboard somebody and train people who are new to this industry, because you look outside the industry in some instances. How do you prep them and how do you onboard them? What are the first steps you want to take?
Yeah. So smart people, like I said, will learn the industry and what you're selling, as long as you give them the time and space during those first few weeks to actually spend time kind of researching and doing homework on the industry. So I think that, and then the hard skills they should already have before they come in. So really you're providing context for the role and context on the company culture. And so it's really important to partner with like talent and culture, your HR team, to get your onboarding docs just really detailed and specific to the role. And I even like to, say, be as explicit as possible. Like, here's how I like to be communicated with. Like, this is an appropriate use of email versus this is the type of thing that you can Slack about, right? And that's different at every company. I don't know that there's best practices. Like, I've had our CEO now, if something is really urgent, he wants me to text him. Or if something needs to be documented and have final sign off, then I email, right? But then if it's an ongoing conversation, we use Slack. So I think all of those things can really help people onboard successfully. And then, just carving out time in those first couple of weeks where it's like, okay, this is personal study time. Like, go on the internet and read these articles about our industry to get up to speed and our competitors, something like that. So yeah, I think that's it. Just spending time building out an onboarding document and an onboarding process that goes above and beyond what talent and culture does, that's specific to your function.
Got it. All makes sense. Onboarding is key. Those first couple weeks are critical for making sure you're setting them up for success, for sure. Once they've kind of moved past the onboarding process, how are you learning their skills or what new skills they need, or identifying areas that they need to grow?
Yeah, so I love this topic. What I've found lately is that different people want different things in terms of career growth at different stages in their lives. So I always like to say, I like to hire people where work isn't their whole life. We want people to bring no one wants to work with people who their job is their entire identity, right? So, and then, I've noticed, especially I'm a mom, and depending on the stage of where my kids are at or what's going up with them, what's going on with them, I'm leaning more into work and want to be promoted and try to get, raises, promotions, all of that. Or maybe my only goal is to do good work, and I really just want to come and do my job and then be able to leave and have work-life balance because my kids really need me at that time. So I have one woman on my team. Frankly, she could be my boss. She's a better marketer than I am in probably every way, but she's a new mom. And so all she really wanted, the way I got her to come on board, was just say, look, like, I can promise you I'll never take credit for your work. I can create an environment of psychological safety. And I can assure you that you can have work-life balance to go and be with your baby when duty calls. So, sometimes that's the way to get the best people, is just to make sure they know you have their back. And then another fun thing that I like to do, I'm a big geek about personality tests. So at my last offsite, I did one. Myers-Briggs is a great one that a lot of companies use, or StrengthsFinder I've heard, or PI is another one, but I like to use the Enneagram. And so the premise of that one is that there's 9 personality types, and we all have a neat personality type, and that throughout your life, if you're in a good state or in a bad state, you're kind of on the spectrum within your personality type. And so it's just a fun way to really get to the root of people's personalities, even outside of work. And a lot of times that kind of unveils some sides to the person that their colleagues might not have already known about them. So identifying dormant skills or passions that they have. And then you can kind of use those to assign stretch projects, or just give people kind of more team culture building projects that really light them up, or just things that will make them have fun at work. And so I find that knowing people's personality types really helps with retention.
I love that. I have done Myers before, but after one of our first conversations, I actually will admit I did the Enneagram test.
Oh, what number are you?
Shocking, I'm sure. I was a 3, the achiever.
Okay.
For sales, success, being known for being great understanding of people, what they think of me. In fact, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this again, and again got 3. So I have a sales summit coming up at the end of September, and this might be some pre-work and some getting to know each other. Like, what was your Enneagram number?
Oh,
but
yeah.
I thought,
this is so nerdy, but I actually have this book that we did at my offsite, The Enneagram at Work. So I highly recommend it.
I'm going to look for it on Amazon, but that was one of the entertaining things, and to read about it. I ended up even paying for the 18-page report because I wanted to.
It's good. Well, I hope I get a commission, because they should really be paying me.
I will let them know. Okay, getting back into it. It's I find as of lately, it's really hard to hire. As you said, people come in, they have many offers. Where are you looking for your talent pool?
Yes. Okay. So it depends on what type of role. I always start with my network. So usually I just do a search on LinkedIn for whatever the role is. And then I see people who are first degree connections. And obviously I know somebody that I've forgotten about who's in my network. I'll reach out to them. And then I click on second degree connections for more like to expand the reach a little bit more. I also ask, I have a bunch of friends who are marketing leaders in Silicon Valley as well, and or in New York or Chicago. So I often reach out to them. But for creative specifically, I'm always on Instagram. And when I find artwork of illustrators or video editors that I like, I just kind of flag it. And then I go back and reach out to those folks. And then I've had some success also on a website called Working Not Working, which is a creative, it's almost like a LinkedIn for creatives. And I think they were recently acquired by Adobe, and it's somewhat similar to like a Dribble or Behance, but people post their portfolios up there. And so for creative, visual creatives, it's really great to be able to see their work. So I search those. And then another place, like I mentioned, a woman on my team who used to be an inside sales rep, I like to recruit from other departments at the company. So sometimes if someone's a superstar, but just doesn't like their job in another function, I'll take a chance on them and bring them over. Sometimes I approach people who, when I go to industry conferences and I just like their vibe or think they said something really bold or smart on a panel, then I'll approach them and try to hire them that way. And then, yeah, I still stalk people on LinkedIn. And I actually, when we're having trouble filling a role, I'll actually make a list of people who I want my recruiter to reach out to. And then they'll use that same list and they'll make a lookalike list to find other people with very similar skill sets if the list does not generate any leads or any hits. So yeah, that's pretty much my trying to think of there's
going up to someone at a conference and just saying, I like
yeah.
that.
Well, so you would do that because you're a 3. I am more just get their email and then email them or reach out.
That's what they have to go for. That's the best thing to talk to.
Actually, that's true. Maybe after a drink when my Chicago accent comes out, then I can approach them in person.
We'll get strong at that point. So we're coming close to the end. I guess if you had one takeaway for those who are attending this or watching later, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I think the theme here is hire based on hard and soft skills, okay. Recruit based on the hard skills, hire for hard and soft skills, and worry less about industry because smart people can probably learn any industry. And I know that's very contrary to the way that you've been doing it. So I'm not, this is what works for me. I'm not professing that it works for everyone or in every type of team, but I find, for example, that B2B marketers can bring a lot of operational experience and discipline to a marketing team. And a lot of times they're kind of yearning for more creativity and a little bit more freedom in terms of what they can produce. So sometimes if I have consumer teams that I'm running, I can poach great people from B2B marketing teams. Likewise, if I'm running a B2B team, a lot of times B2C folks, like people who work at agencies or even in e-commerce or fashion or food or more of the consumer industries, they're often overworked and underpaid. So I'm able to pull them over by offering a little bit more security and growth pathing and sometimes a higher salary. So I would say, yeah, biggest takeaway is find people with the right combo of hard and soft skills you need and care less about industry.
Got it. I don't know if any questions come in. Let me check that. Doesn't look like it at the moment, which leaves me one question left I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you working on right now with your marketing team? What are like some of the things you're looking forward to at the future at Mind?
Yeah, so we're at a great inflection point at Mind right now. We've achieved product market fit. We're growing like gangbusters. So now is the time for us to supplement the direct response advertising that we've been doing, like paid social, with some brand awareness work. So we're working on our brand strategy. And then I will be looking into targeted ways to drive brand awareness, such as OTT maybe, or so.
Hey,
So I will be in
we will
maybe.
be in touch to talk OTT for sure and all of your paid media.
Great.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great having this conversation with you. I'm super excited about this opportunity that you've been able to present to everybody about building out that successful sales team. Looks like Sydney's on. Are you ready to introduce our next group?
I am whenever you guys are ready, but thank you both so much for being here today. And thank you for this awesome conversation. It was really, really great.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sydney.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Amy. Bye, guys.
Bye. Hello, everyone. So my name is Sydney. I work on our content and community team here at Brand Innovators, and I am here to introduce our next session. So in a moment, we're going to have Beth McKenna Moore, the Senior Director, Head of U.S. Media at Haleon, moderated by the wonderful Jennifer Starr, Head of Industry, FinServe, Telco, and Health at Nextdoor. So they're going to be joining us now. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Sydney.
How are you today?
Great. How are you?
Great. Thank you both for being here. So I'll turn it over to you two when you both get on and ready, and you can go ahead.
Thanks, Sydney.
Thanks.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good to see you again.
Good to see. I was trying to upload the background.
Me too.
I was like, I can do this, and then I was like,
Can't do it.
it.
That's okay. I think
I have it
everyone's
on my desktop.
yeah, we're used to this anyway. So all
Exactly.
good. You are concert bound tonight, is that right? You're going to do something actually fun?
I'm going to see Florence and the Machine tonight at the Garden. I'm so excited. And we've had the tickets for months, so I've never seen them in concert, so I'm really, really excited for it.
I've heard great
I
things.
don't get out much, so.
Same. I am with you. Also a concert. It sounds like very novel to go to.
Right?
Again. Oh, I'm so happy for you. Well, let's kick it off. First of all, I'm so thrilled to be chatting with you. We got to spend a little time together last week, and I thought it was such a great organic conversation. And we have a ton to share with the audience today. I want to start with Beth specific questions, and then I think we can back up and go like a little broader around Haleon and your role. But first and foremost, I would just kind of love to hear about your journey. How did you come to be in the role that you're in today? And where did you start out in the industry?
Sure. So I'm Beth McKenna Moore. I'm currently the Senior Director, U.S. Media Lead at Haleon. And my career started on the agency side, actually. And I started on the agency side when I was in college, when I interned at Mullen Advertising. So it feels like a million years ago, yet not really that long ago at all. But I was on the agency side for well over a decade. I worked at a bunch of different agencies. It got to the point where I was just ready to go client side, and got an opportunity to go to Reebok, and we can definitely talk more about that. But that was a huge turning point in my career, moving from the agency side, going over to Reebok. And I spent 6 years in the global marketing team at Reebok. And then just last year, changed industries entirely. So moved over to CPG, fast moving CPG, joined what was called GSK. So now Haleon, formerly GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Health. So we have a whole new identity. We're called Haleon as of July officially. But yeah, so I've been in the ad industry for what feels like forever. But I genuinely love it. And it's the people more than anything that really keep me going in the industry for sure.
So you have spoken a little bit about working for amazing people. I'm curious how people have informed your career moves? You talked about going client side from the agency. You've talked about changing industries from retail into consumer healthcare. Talk to me about how you think about people and who do you follow? Who do you try to align your career to? How do you think about those decisions?
I guess I've always been a people type person. My personality is I love to engage with people one-on-one. So when I got into the ad industry world, when I was just an intern, I loved like the camaraderie of it. There were fellow interns that I got to know better. I loved the team atmosphere. I'm an athlete at heart. So working with a team has always like been part of how I operate. And I just think, advertising definitely brings that out in people. You spend a lot of time with one another. So for me, it's been really about the relationships that I've built and the folks that I've, gotten to know along the way that have helped me kind of move along in my path as I switched different agencies or different opportunities came about. And it sounds super cliche, but it really is in the relationships that you build. What can really help you navigate your career, both like the high and some of the more difficult points.
Did relationships factor in the categories that you chose to work? Did that identity as an athlete factor in? Did your love of advertising factor in? How did you make big kind of industry-wide jumps like that?
So that's a great question, because when I first started out in advertising, I worked with a lot of different brands, some really, really cool brands, Match.com, XM, Sirius Radio. At one point, I started to get on a lot of financial services brands, and all of a sudden that became what I was good at and what I was suddenly getting a lot of opportunities with. And I obviously learned a lot when I worked on those types of brands, but quite honestly, it didn't tap into my personal interest. So when I got the opportunity at Reebok, which I had been seeking out for a while, I was I love fitness. I love wellness. I've bopped around a lot of different types of brands. I've been in, on different retail clients. I'm I really want to be on one brand that speaks to me and some of my personal interests and values. So when I got the job at Reebok, I was super over the moon. At the time, I was also doing CrossFit. And I say that with a little bit of a laugh, because I was not a good CrossFitter. I wasn't a competitive CrossFitter, but I was paying the monthly dues to do a CrossFit class a few days a week. Reebok obviously had a big partnership with CrossFit, and all of a sudden I was part of this culture that movement was just embedded and ingrained in how the company operated. And it was so new to me coming from the agency side of things, where, to be honest, we didn't take a break to go get a workout in during the day. That just wasn't how things worked. But it happened that at Reebok, that was a big part of the culture, was practicing what we preach and the importance of movement. So it was, a huge turning point for me. And I think I finally got the opportunity to choose. And I know I was very lucky to have that choice of where I wanted to go and where I wanted to kind of take the skills that I had learned on the client side at that time. That was back in 2015.
So when you think about the balance of health and work, I think that's so interesting, because in both of those roles, both at Reebok and now at Haleon, you are dealing in people's health and wellness. How do you, as a leader, and then also kind of same question as a marketer, think about people's everyday health and wellness as it relates to their work and as it relates to their whole self?
I now that I've moved along in my career, I try to instill in people that they have to take care of themselves. That is the most important thing. I often use that cheesy phrase, self-care is how you take your power back. And I believe that now more than ever, because when I moved over from the agency side, I was very burnt out. I was having I was having a hard time drawing boundaries with work. I knew that I needed to kind of change how I was operating. And I got that opportunity at Reebok, because part of the culture was, hey, you can step away from your desk, go get some movement in. We're not telling you what you have to do. You go for a walk outside. You could go do CrossFit if that's what you want to do. You could play basketball. And because then all of a sudden I had the permission and honestly the expectation to do it, I started to realize how much healthier I felt. how much more mentally clear I felt, and that I was a better teammate because I was doing those things. You're like, oh, this all totally makes sense. And now there's all types of research. We know that like taking a break is better for your productivity, is ultimately therefore better for business. So that's when I really started to prioritize, I guess you could say, self-care, and making sure that like I was prioritizing my health and my family. And then I just try to make sure folks that I work with and folks on my team feel the same, that they know that they have permission to kind of like put their health and wellness first. Because when you do that, I think everything else follows. So yeah, it's just a big part of how I operate. And Brene Brown is somebody that I followed for a while, a thought leader that I really gravitate towards, because she talks a lot about empathy and leadership and the power of vulnerability. And I learned over time that that's the type of leader I want to be. I'm a pretty real person, at least as far as I'm concerned. I like to be myself. I like to be honest about things. And I think part of that is saying, hey, I need to take a break. I need to step away. If it's, for instance, this week, I could have traveled to Helion, but I stayed home because it was my daughter's first week of school. And I was like, I know what's best for me and my family is that I'm there for her first week of school. It means so much to me, these little moments. It doesn't mean that I'll always get to do that. Like, I have responsibility as a business leader, but I just try to instill in people on my team that I want them to take care of themselves. And like, really, I do believe in like putting the people first, and like people in performance, business performance are on the same playing field. You got to put them as equal. Like, we have a business to run. There are numbers to hit, of course, but also the well-being of your employees and your team has to be equal, if not more to that, because those are the people running your business. So that's really been something I've kind of fiercely leaned into over the last, like, I'd say 8 years of my career.
First of all, how is the first week of school going? How's she doing?
Okay, so this makes me laugh because I brought her into school. I held her hand to get across the street, and then she ran. And she ran to her teachers. And I was like, oh, and her name's Ellie Sue. My daughter's 4, and she's at preschool. This is her second year of preschool. And she was so excited. She just ran into the school. I couldn't even get a picture.
She's like, bye, Mom. See you never.
And there was like that little part of you that's like, oh my God, she didn't even say bye to me. She doesn't care. But then there's the other that's like, that's great. Like she loves it so much. Like either way, it's tough. Like if she didn't want to go in, I'd feel awful. Cause I'd be like, yeah, I know this is good for you. But then like her leaving me in the dust, I was like, what?
It's a duality. That's parenting in a nutshell, right?
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
So I love kind of the last point that you made is around like only in the last, you said 8 years of your career, have you really felt empowered to kind of lean into this and understood, and that it's come into focus for you how much kind of whole health matters to business health. I find that young women coming up now have a different relationship with work than maybe like you and I had when we started out. Their expectations of their employers are a little different. Talk to me about that. What would you say to these young women about how they should be thinking about their relationship to their work day one?
I think it is important, if you can, to find a company that aligns to your values. And thankfully with the internet, you can do that type of research on your own. You may get to the point where you need a job, right? You have bills to pay and you may not have that luxury, but I do think people have more access to information than ever. So, if you can, seek out companies that align to your values. If the environment is important to you, or certain social topics, like you look the companies up that like kind of stand for what you believe in. Because I believe if you work somewhere that kind of aligns to your values and your passions, it's going to make your job much easier and more enjoyable. So I would say, seek out kind of aligned values if you can. And like anything else, and this might make me sound kind of like an old lady, is like expect to put in the hard work, right? When I started out in the industry, I loved the advertising industry. So I was really energized by the opportunity to work in advertising. So I was willing to put in the extra work. And thankfully I saw that pay off, over time, but I invested a lot earlier in my career. Like I would say the hours and the commitment. And to me, it was worth it. But, if you can find a company that aligns to your values, if you're doing something that really excites you, like you'll want to put in the hard work, right? You'll like want to invest that time. And then I'd also say, make sure you have good mentors. And I was reading somewhere not to call it a mentor anymore. I don't know if this is like right or not, but to like a champion, like, find people in your life who can be champions for you in your career. And it doesn't have to be, someone who works at the same company as you. It could be, a friend of yours in a different industry. It could be a relative who like you've always looked up to, but people that can help guide you along the way. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had to call on different people in my life for support or just advice. So I think, again, building that network and maybe finding that group who can really help you as you navigate and make decisions. You're going through interview processes, you're looking at offers, hopefully. Like, how do you evaluate these things? What are the things that you need to consider? So hopefully you can find, those few people that you can lean on to get advice and really honest guidance that are looking out for you in your best interest so that you can, make the best decisions possible as you navigate your career.
Who have been some of those champions for you?
I would say my mom, for sure. So up until I was 3, she stayed at home with my sister and I. And then once I was 3, she got back into the workforce and was an attorney. So she's always to me been this like businesswoman. And it's probably embarrassing how often I still call on her for advice, but I'm like, whatever, she's awesome. And she will tell it like it is. So, she's definitely been somebody that I've gone to throughout my career, especially in the very beginning when I was, graduating college and do I take this job? And like, what if it's not what I want? And sometimes you just need somebody who knows you to say, take the risk, take the chance. You can do this. If it doesn't work out, you'll find something else, or like you'll have options. So definitely my mom. I'm lucky in that regard. And I would say, the circle of like women friends in my life. Those are, people joke, there's all those like cliches of like behind every woman is a group of like women on a text to, like, absolutely. Like that's like how I get by every day. Yep. If just commiserating on balancing like home stuff with work. There's just a multitude of people that I think, I rely on to help get me through it.
Talk to me about, have you ever had like bad advice in your career, either uniquely gendered advice or just advice that didn't ultimately serve you well?
Yes, I feel like we all probably have. One thing I remember hearing, I wouldn't say earlier in my career, but at a point in my career was like, be confident. You need to be confident.
Classic.
And that would really shut me down because I'd be like, I'm not confident enough. There's something wrong with me. But I do think there's a difference between like being confident and being competent. And over time, I started to accept more about myself that, I'm not somebody who like loves getting up on a stage and presenting. Like I'll do it because it's part of the job, right? It's often part of like what we do. But for so long, I would like push myself to like, okay, have the confidence, do this. You have to like fit this certain mold. And it was very uncomfortable for me because that's just not who I am. So there's a bit of like, I came to accept the things that I know I'm good at and the ways that I flourish. So I just don't think it's good advice to tell someone to be confident. I think it's, how can you, hone your skill set, like what type of, resources can you dig into to improve, if there's something that you need to work on or an area that you want to understand a bit better. But like just telling someone to be more confident, it's like telling someone who's mad to calm down. You're like, oh, it's like the opposite.
I will not calm down.
I will not. I do that to my daughter. I'll be like, you need to calm down. I'm like, she's going to get worse. But, those types of comments where you're like, you almost feel like you're expected to fit some mold.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I'm actually not that mold. And there's a little bit that I wish I could, but frankly, there are things that I'm good at, and like, let me lean into those things and let me own that. And that will actually build your confidence when you really accept the things you're good at and that you may bring something different to the table than someone else. So
was there like an age or a level of seniority that you finally achieved that? Is it a journey that everyone has to go on individually? Like how do you think about arriving where you've arrived there?
I think part of it was just like the journey.
Yeah.
Definitely. Some of it was like, as my husband and I began to navigate building our family and going through some personal challenges, like all of it kind of collides when you're also in like a fast-paced career. And it became clear to me the things that like were important to me and the things I needed to prioritize. It became clear that I do like to work. I was like, I love my job. It's a part of my identity. Like, I'm not going to apologize for that. Like, I'm like a working mom, as they say. And I love being a mom. I love being a present mom, but I also like my career as well. So I think it's just been time for me. And yeah, probably also listening to other leaders and kind of absorbing bits of things that resonate and being like, oh, that works for me too. Or that's something that I want to make sure I uphold as a value. I just needed, I think a chance to really grow up more. And it took time and it took experience. But I think the biggest change, came when I left the agency side and got onto the client side, where at least for me, and maybe it's because I actually had more time to sort things out. When I worked on the agency side, I worked so much that I'm not sure I gave myself the opportunity to step back and reflect on things as much as I probably needed to. And I got that chance, I'd say, once I moved over to the client side, because I did have better work-life balance. Like, that's the truth of it.
I hope that, and I'm sure there are lots of young women in your network that you champion that are at the agency who can maybe benefit from your lived experience around creating and finding that balance for yourself.
Yeah.
That's exceptional. So you touched on that you were building a family and building your career at the same time. It's a balance a lot of us have to strike. Serena Williams, famously, her beautiful piece last month. It's no one is immune when you're thinking about this. And Haleon recently made headlines with an incredible benefit extending all employees 26 weeks of paid family leave. This feels huge. Arguably, this is industry leading. I'm curious how it's felt internally, how it was communicated. Do you know anything about the way the company arrived at the decision? Just how are employees feeling about it?
When it hit the press, that's the first time I had heard about it.
Wow.
And I was so excited. And the truth is, it's not something that I personally will take advantage of, but it's such a stance for a company to take that Haleon is invested in families. Yeah. Like, I was just like, this is awesome. And I wanted to like message everybody, like, did you see, this is fantastic. Like, this is what companies should be doing. These big companies, I believe, where, if it's our government, whatever it might, that is not stepping up, like, how can big corporations help their employees and help them prioritize family? So to me, it was an extremely meaningful decision, an investment for the company to make. And it is progressive. Like, it's somewhat sad to realize that, but it's progressive because it's both parents. It's regardless of how you grow your family. 26 weeks of paid leave. It's, and actually Reebok had a similar policy when I was there at the time. And it was one of the reasons I stayed. It made a big difference because I felt like I can grow my family here. At that point in my life, I was growing my family. I was a very committed employee and I was like, I can do both. Yes, I can. And it just was such a relief. So I think people are excited about it, regardless if it's something you'll directly, be able to benefit by or not. And I hope it helps, set a precedence, helps other companies also kind of get on board offering their employees this type of benefit. And it's not just about the quote unquote maternity leave. It's also paternity leave. It's both parents having this equal time to be able to be home with their baby. It's so important. And like, that time goes by so fast. It's insane. So yeah, it was a really great decision that was made, that it really aligns with the positioning of the company around, it's all about delivering better everyday health with humanity. So again, like, how do you live that? Like, how do you live that purpose? You're like, okay, everyday health is being there for your family, is being there like after childbirth, or if, when you have a newborn or a new child in your life, and being able to care for them and build your family. Like, that's a demonstration of helping improve everyday health. So I was super proud of that.
This ladders back to kind of two things you've already said today too, which one is that you can seek out companies that are values aligned. So what an amazing recruiting tool for them.
Yes,
I'm sure that wasn't lost on the company. And then I think too is happy, healthy people make a healthy, happy business, right? And so it's like there's that halo effect of you feel energized by this, even if you don't directly benefit from it. What an awesome kind of across the board uplifting move on their part. I'm so impressed. You guys have seen a lot of change this year. You started today by saying, prior to this summer, you were a GSK employee. Mm-hmm. The spinoff is pretty significant, and you aren't the only company that's been through it. J&J spinning off their OTC units, Pfizer offloading also similarly their OTC brands. Can you talk a little bit about what are the driving forces in your mind behind these brands, and how does this impact OTC as an industry?
I think there are these big organizations that there's growth in breaking off these portions of the company, and there's autonomy, right? Like now that Haleon's standalone, where we have this autonomy now as our own, book of brands, and OTC has grown significantly, especially like many industries have over the last few years, and a lot of that has to do with people are more cognizant of their health more than ever.
Yeah.
And also like alternative means for treating themselves outside of, going to the doctor, because that can be more challenging. So I think OTC growth has a lot to do with the rise of self-care. Like, self-care, if you even look at, I think it was like a Google stat, how much just like the keyword self-care was searched in the last couple of years, and the growth, and that people are now more conscious than ever of their health and the different ways that they can take care of themselves. And these OTC brands are offering different options for them. If it's a sleep aid, if it's a supplement that can help like with immunity, if it's like a pain reliever so that you can get out and be with your kids and feel better without having to necessarily like go and seek out, a doctor or go to a medical professional. So it's a really exciting time to be in the industry. I mean, I didn't know this when I joined what was GSK Consumer Health, just the size of the portfolio that Haleon has. So it was a learning curve to me to know that there are over 20 brands in the US, everything from Advil to Sensodyne to Tums to Chapstick. And you're like, these are really cool, everyday iconic brands that people, they're talked about in pop culture. So I do think we have such a unique opportunity with such a diverse portfolio of brands, and the fact that people now more than ever are more like in tune with their health, and like that. Thankfully, we have more control over it, right? Because we have more access to information than ever before, which can be detrimental. Don't get me wrong. Like I can get into a Google rabbit hole myself, but access to information, and even like telemedicine, access to like, professional support if you need it, that people know that it's not just like about your physical health, like your mental health, your social health, all of this stuff is interrelated. So it is an exciting time to like be in the industry. And, one of the other reasons I joined Haleon is the positioning about bringing everyday health to consumers and like really leading with purpose. And I see us doing that and being able to do it. And the offering our own employees a better, benefit, the 26 weeks of paid leave is a demonstration of that. So it's for instance, why I joined Reebok at the time that I did. I believed in like the power of movement and how that could help, you physically as well as like in a community sense. So I think, again, finding a company that its purpose resonates and you're like, okay, I can really do something with this. And we're honestly just at the beginning in many ways, because the company just broke off in July. So July was when Haleon was officially launched on the London and New York Stock Exchange. So it's a really exciting time, and it's a unique opportunity to be at a company that's demerging and spinning off on its own and like now building a new identity. And yes, there are other companies in the space doing similar things, but right now, like, we are the largest, global OTC provider. So it's this really exciting opportunity that we have.
What has been difficult about the process? What has been challenging or surprising?
I would say, I don't know if anything's been surprising, because I came from an organization that was always going through a lot of transition. So I was somewhat prepared, but like anything else, it's just balancing like all the change, right? It's just accepting that we're in like this state of constant change. And like when it feels overwhelming, and oftentimes, so I lead the media business in the US. We partner with Publicis in the US. We'll talk about like, we're making progress, right? Like there can be little things that feel monotonous or, confusing. And we're like, but we're making progress. Like, let's take a step back and make sure we acknowledge the steps that we're taking, and that things aren't going to be figured out overnight, right? Like all of a sudden this isn't going to be all figured out and we have everything, running exactly how we want it. So it's that, it can be overwhelming during a state of change, and, couple that with all the macro factors that everybody has to worry about. COVID just being one of those things is like, being at a company that is going through change, and that on top of it, you're like, okay, like there are times that like you need a break. Like I'll talk to the team. I'm like, give yourself a break. Like if you need to be done for the day, be done for the day, because, everybody's working really hard and there's a lot on people's minds. So it's just being in tune with that as well, of when people might need an opportunity to like press pause.
I love your instinct as a leader to celebrate the wins. I just wrote down, we're making progress. Like it's so simple, but it's so easy to miss. We're all moving so fast and things can feel pretty intense at times. You're absolutely right. To take a pause is essential. So going back one theme, you have talked about how culturally we're more in touch with our health. What are some of the external influences? Because COVID obviously is one major influence. We joked about like anytime someone sneezes now, we're like, what is happening? We're a big Theraflu household, have always been. Love Theraflu. More quicker to reach for it these days than maybe have been in the past. What other kind of cultural influences do you attribute to people's overall kind of awareness of and the conversation around their health?
So of course, yeah, like you said, COVID just kind of like propelling it, to the forefront. I think social media and just like the access to information and people talking more about different topics. And that because of that, there's more access to information about your health. There's, you have more access to data around your health than ever before. Like technology is propelling that. There's all types of devices that you can wear to better understand your sleep patterns and then be able to improve them based on that data. So, technology is really changing things, changing the way. So I'm totally comfortable sharing my daughter's a type 1 diabetic. And when you talk about technology, she's on a Dexcom, which is a blood sugar monitor, and an insulin pump. These are two pieces of technology that did not exist, I don't think, 10 years ago. And this allows us to manage her type 1. And it's fascinating because it's data. Like I can see her blood sugar on my phone. Like she's not with me, but I can see that information on my phone at any time because of that type of technology. So it's just fascinating to see what, technology can do for health and for healthcare, because now like this gives her more independence, right? Like she can go to school. I'm watching her from afar via my phone, but like maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have felt comfortable sending her to school because I wouldn't, I would have had to gone and manually check her blood sugar. That's the way like, it really had been done. Wow. So I just see those those advances in technology is just so incredibly fascinating for what it's doing for people and like their independence and just the control that they can have over their health, because there's access to data that they used to not have. Like maybe their doctor did. Like, do you remember having to like get your medical records and like, when I get the results to that test and it's like, I'm going to fax it to you. And you'd be like, great, I'll wait 5 days. Now, like you can go in the portal, you can get that information. And even like the other day I was trying to make an appointment. They're like, we can do this virtually. Like, this is no big deal. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can do this virtually. You can have a conversation with a doctor virtually versus having to like go into the office. So it blows my mind some days to just see how far we've come in a short time. And I mean, not to be a broken record, but it's almost like the COVID pandemic, like propelled that, like expedited it, because we had to. I mean, with some of the type 1 technology that's been in the work for decades, but yeah, there's just so many examples of how that's really like changing the healthcare landscape.
It's an incredible example and very personal. I'm excited for your daughter. It sounds like she's going to have ultimate freedom as a result.
So she calls it her superpower, which is really sweet.
Oh,
so I was like, if anyone asks you what's, because you can see them, like if they're on her arm, she's like, it's my superpower. I'm like, you got it.
4 years old. What a magical age, right?
It really is.
So can you give us, and this is, you can say now, can you give us any like insider info on like cool stuff coming? Have you seen anything cool coming out like that you might have a first look at?
I wish I did. I can't, honestly, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I think that another advantage is like to be competitive, and to be competitive in any industry, right? You have to innovate.
Yeah.
So I think that's obviously what you're going to see in the OTC category is how do you innovate for consumers? Like how do consumers want to consume your product? How do they want to access your product? What's a better packaging for people? What's something that might be more sustainable and better for the environment? So I just think there is so much potential with like if it's technology fueled or sustainability fueled, just like the different things that you can see, because it's not just about the quote unquote product anymore, right? Because we offer a lot of different types of products. One of our biggest competitions is private label. So it's like, why would someone choose our brand versus a private label if the ingredients are relatively similar? So what is it that we're building as a brand? What type of connection are we making with consumers? Could it be a packaging factor? Could it be some way that we're communicating that actually resonates with them more, that ultimately leads them to choose our brand versus someone else? So it's constant, right? We're always kind of like any other business thinking about like how we're keeping up with consumers, changing preferences and ways that they want to engage, and looking at that as like a fun thing, which is what kind of fuels me in advertising is like, sometimes it's easy to acknowledge, especially in media, just how overwhelming it is with like everything so disparate, like how many different platforms and ways there are to like, access information. And now it's so much more complicated when you're a media planner and evaluating, but thinking of that as like, no, that's really exciting. Like, this is never going to be boring. That's for sure. Right. I'll never be bored. I don't want to be bored anyway. So kind of taking that as like a really positive challenge that things will continue to change, but that's a good thing too, because it will really keep you engaged and interested.
Right. Instead of feeling daunted by it.
Yeah.
Well, and when you mention private label, you think about also like all of the channel changes, retail media networks didn't exist more than a few years ago. And now it's an essential part of marketing.
Well, we say we're like retailers are media partners are retailers. It's like this ultimate collide. So, and you're right. It wasn't like that a few years ago. It is a different type of landscape, and there's a lot for everybody to learn. But it's fascinating because people are using things like Amazon as their primary search engine. Like that's how they're going to look for products. It's how they're going to look before going to Google. So it's just the cool thing I like that also is about, you could say, advertising or being in media is like the answers are like at your fingertips. Like we have you can look and see the data. You can understand what people are searching for, what devices that they're using, how they're consuming information. It's like, as long as you slow down a bit, like the insights are there to help you make those decisions and evolve what you're doing. And that's the piece that like I totally geek out on, is like the access to data that like can help us make better decisions. And that it's not that overwhelming when you realize like you have the information in front of you.
We didn't talk about this, but I'm curious now that we're on this track around the difference in your mind between like performance data and then data that gets to kind of like brand health signals. Do you favor one data set over the other? Or is it both?
That's a great question. I like both. I think I have we talk a lot about this of, you know, the importance of brand building and looking at brand equity and, you know, the growth of your brand over time, but then also the current business and the state of the current business. And, you know, these things work together, right? Of like when you're out there building your brand, you know, it's having a short-term impact on your business, but you can also, if you're using the right solutions, quantify the longer-term impact it's having. So I think for a long time, it always felt like one or the other, but really you need both, because your brand building is going to help that like more in the now rational messaging, trying to target people who are in market. It's going to make that more efficient. So to me, and this is a big, I wouldn't say a big shift, it's just a big focus right now for the marketing team, is having that holistic approach to measurement. And like, how are we really looking across paid, owned, and earned? How are we looking at, you know, the combination of our brand building and more short-term sales driving activities and trying to paint that picture together? And it's challenging, right? But I think it's important to be able to, like, as best as you can, bring it into one place and not have it be about one or the other, of like, we need both of these pieces functioning well to get the optimal output, both for like the immediate business and then like the health of the business over the long term.
What a sensible, lovely answer. I love that.
Sounds so easy, right? But like
it sounds easier than it
sounds
is
easy, but
that's okay. That's our North Star. We'll get there.
Right? Exactly.
We have 5 minutes left, and I have to be good on time for the BI team. I am curious to end on, the question is really about mistakes, but I'd rather frame them as like learning, growth opportunities. What do you look back on and think like, I would have done that differently?
Oh God, there's so much. For me, it's now I have some tools that help me manage things better. I by no means pretend that I have it all together, but for me, I know, going back to the movement thing, not to be, I am a better leader if I work out, for instance. So it's like, you know, making sure I construct my day as best as I can in a way that I fit in the chance to move, to get exercise in. Because I sometimes would sacrifice that in the past. I would sacrifice the break or the movement to just keep working, because I thought, I'm just gonna keep my head down, I'm gonna keep going. And I burnt myself out doing that. So give yourself permission to take a break, and that break can be different for every individual. But I think I'd go back to my old self and be like, you need to take a break. You will be a much more patient and productive person if you do that. And also like owning up to the things that I'm good at versus the things that like might not actually be my strong suit, and not being ashamed about it, and kind of really being proud of the things that I know like I'm good at, and not like, for instance, the whole thing about stage presenting and whatnot, rather than be like, oh gosh, I have to get better at this. I beat myself up. It's like, it's fine. You can get better at it. You can practice. It's a challenge, but hey, this may never be your number one thing, and that's okay. So I think that the times I like beat myself up on things that are just, it's just not productive.
Isn't it funny that it kind of all comes down to like our relationship with ourselves, and having that like forgiveness and permission, and like that all comes from you, Beth, this has been such a joy. You have an amazing way of, I think, giving clarity to concepts that could seem really heady or daunting or big. And I'm so grateful for your time. I'm grateful we've forged this connection. And I hope you have a blast tonight at Florence.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. I think that wraps us up. Sydney, are you still with us?
Hi.
Oh, you're muted, Sydney.
you.
You
As
looked
I
happy.
go on the whole thing. Basically, just me saying that thank you both so much for being here. And it was such an amazing session. Loved every personal story and all of it. It was super, super great. So thank you for the time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
So thank you all so much for tuning in today. And that's a wrap. That's the end of our day. So everyone tune into our next session. And coming up, you can see that on the Brand Innovators website. And I hope everyone has an amazing